Hey guys, how are you? Today, John might be a little while before he comes down. So my project I'm working on right now is a plant fiber. This is nettles and sea cell. What else is in it? Mint fiber. There might be some rose fiber in here too, but I did it up on a drum carder back home and I just never got around to spinning it. And so now I kind of want to use it up so that I just am sure that I'm spinning every day, if that makes sure. Hey Mandolin, how are you? So let's see what's going on today. We do have the Angora bunny still in the apartment here. All the other rabbits are out at the barn. Hey MJ, little bits of heaven. Hey Catherine. So we have all the rabbits out at the barn in better cages, and we have we still have the Angora here because we haven't been able to get his feet clipped. Did you want to get him out and we can show him, Paigey?
Sure.
So he has been really good. We could have most of him clipped, but not all. And I did not have a problem with it. Usually I have some pretty good allergic issues with Angora clipping, but we didn't have a problem with him. He's smaller than our other Angoras have been. I think he's an English. Oh, okay. Okay, we have somebody calling this really important. Hold on a second, guys. I have to close it. There we go. Okay, there we go. I am so sorry that took like way too long, but that was really, really important. And I have no idea if you guys heard it or if it was still on or anything. So it's going to be really embarrassing if you guys heard that phone conversation. Because there's, you know, I'm really good at technology. That's why I should work in technology, is because I have such a grasp of how to turn on and off my live stream. Sorry. Okay. So, John, did you want to read any questions?
I guess we can talk while we wait. I'm from Washington State, says Shannon Graver.
Oh, hey Shannon, how are you?
Mandolin's probably in.
Yes, Mandolin is in.
Says, I actually got an alpaca farm in Oklahoma. I just got back from an alpaca farm in Oklahoma. It was so much fun. She's in Arkansas right now.
Before I got on here, I was watching a video about how to make linen from flax, and I'm now going to go do research. I'm trying to make a list of everything I can grow here that won't grow in Idaho, because if you're gonna live in a different climate, you might as well go adventurous and just grow the things that you've never been able to grow before instead of the old standby. So this year, I'm gonna do, if we get a place, I shouldn't say that, if we get a place. What I would grow is peaches and pawpaws, even though I can grow peaches in Idaho. We do have a producing peach tree in Idaho.
Shannon says, did they have fiber you could get
For that packet?
If I interested? If it's...
Sure,
if interested.
They must have been talking about... Oh, there's Nikki. Hey, Nikki. Oh, Nikki's trying to call me. I can't pick up Nikki. That would be two phone calls.
You're not that important phone call.
She is super important to me, but she also has my channel and she can come on and watch it live, and then I can call her.
I'll text her. How's that?
Yeah, can you text Nikki and let her know? Sorry, we're in the middle of a live stream and I've already interrupted it
I
once.
just missed a phone call too.
So I was watching a video about how to make linen out of flax. I don't know if it will grow here. I do not believe that it likes strong heat, and it gets strong heat here. The weather is strong in the heat department. So I do not know if it will grow here, but I'm going to look it up and see if it will, because the cost of seeds is so inexpensive. And the only thing is I need to get my plants in the ground before I leave to go fix things up in Idaho. At this point, and it does change, subject to change, at this point we'll be in Idaho for a month, and I have so much that I want to do in the off-grid cabin, so much that I want to do. Hey Stacy. Let's, oh, it's Doug and Stacy. Why did I think it just said Stacy? Speaking of which, Doug and Stacy, it amazes me how early in the morning you respond to my videos. I'm like, wait a minute, what time is it? Why are they up watching my video? And then I remember we're in the same time zone. So most everybody else, it seems to be way too early in the morning for anybody to be up. But anyway, I would love to be able to make linen. So maybe what I should do is plant some in Idaho and have it go to seed and see if it'll self-seed. And I don't know, I'm just really excited for this planting season. I do already have peas planted out in the hotbed, but I do not believe that my hotbed is big enough. I do not believe it's big enough, because usually within 2 days I have lots of heat coming off of a hotbed, and this time I did it circular, and it's about 1/3 the size of what I usually do, and it's not heating up yet. But for the first couple days, as it's heating up, I tend to it and I watch it and I add more rabbit manure and I just kind of baby it a little bit. And this time I'm not out there to do it. I am out there once a day to feed animals, and that's it. Let's see.
I can't find her.
I can't read very well.
Let me go back. Okay. Doug's in.
So, what?
Shannon asked a good question. Are all of you here for Julia's homesteading or fiber knowledge? I'm here because of fiber.
Well, and fiber is fun, and one of the reasons I'm doing the plant fiber right now is that I find that if I don't spin every day, I lose my expertise pretty quickly. It is a muscle memory thing. It is a practice thing. Even if it's only 20 minutes a day, it is important to do it every single day. And I just finished a dog hair project. And what else did I do? I did dog hair, and then I just did up some mohair and a mohair / alpaca project. And so now I'm doing almost the last, I think this is the last of my fiber, and this is plant. You can also use nettles. Part of this fiber is actually from nettles. And let's see, what's the other one? Bamboo, nettles, sea cell, mint fiber, and I believe some rose fiber. So that's pretty much what we're doing. What else have we been up to? The girls and I went out today to take care of horses, and the girls ended up riding. They had a good ride. We have 4 rabbits now, 3 of them out at the barn, 1 of them still here. Oh, yes, Paige, go ahead and bring the rabbit over. I was going to show you the Angora rabbit. Life in the UP. Hello, hello.
He likes to be up here in the top.
So she's going to bring him over, and I'll try to show you how I have clipped him and what is left to clip. He had been used as a pet, and I believe that he's what are they called? An English Angora instead of a German Giant, because he's about half the size of the rabbits that we had before that were Angora. I don't know how well I can show him to you, but he's super soft. We got a lot of fiber off of him. Everything along his back here came off really nice. I just used scissors to clip him. I don't know if you guys can even tell that I'm holding a rabbit, because they have a tendency to be very, don't, honey, I didn't ask you to. No, don't, you can't walk with it. Hold on. That's why we have the paper towels in it. So I just don't want him to jump off my lap. So in between these layers of, what's it called? Paper towels. I have deposits of his fiber. I just really don't want him to jump off my lap and get hurt. So let's see if I can show him to you a little bit closer. This is him. And you leave the furnishings on the ears and also on the face and on the cheeks. These are the part that you do not clip. These on the sides on his face. But we're having a hard time. No. You're okay. You're okay. He is really good. A lot of rabbits, for how long he has to sit. When we clipped him, he had to sit for 2 hours. But usually he's on my lap, not right up here in the face of the camera. So everything on his legs, we still need to get. We still need to get his legs. And a lot of times they'll get quite matted if they get wet. And so that's what we still need to do. Okay, don't let him jump. He will get really hurt if he hits the ground. Okay, So, where'd the basket go? Now I can show him the basket, now that I don't have a bunny on my lap.
And it's back in the shelf. Kai, can you grab it?
Can she reach it?
Yeah.
So, he is the only one left in the house because I'm worried that if we take him out there, there's no way we're going to be able to get him to sit for that long. So this is the fiber, if you can see that. And I have it between layers of paper towel so that it doesn't puff up into the air. So as I had a good amount of fiber down, I put another paper towel down and maybe spritz the paper towel with a little bit of water. And it keeps the fiber from getting up into the air. And we will see what we think of spinning it. Angora is not my favorite because it's not super tough fiber. It's not for outdoor use. It's not rugged like sheep's wool. What are you saying?
Very soft.
It is very, very soft. So he is not going to freeze. He's still very warm. And most of his belly and most of his legs we still haven't done yet. So he still has quite a bit. It looks like he doesn't have much fiber on him, but he still has a lot of fiber on him.
Aww. Sandy Million. My fainting goat is getting ready to start losing her undercoat in a week. You're welcome to it. I live between Prattville and West Tulsa.
Fun.
Probably in the house that you were looking at.
Probably not. There were no goats there.
There were no goats there?
So I would love fiber. I
think Fry Services, by the way, was saying a joke when he said he was going to freeze.
Oh, the bunny?
FYI, yeah.
Well, it kind of depends on where you are as far as if they would freeze. But again, he's in the house, so he's probably a little less comfortable here in the house than he would be outside, even though it's chilly outside, just because he's a rabbit and they do overheat. Thank you, Paige. So I do get really excited at the prospect of so many projects. If we do end up getting a property, I have no intention of starting anything perennial as far as long-lived trees or anything. The first thing I would plant would be my herbs that I have here in the window because they're all very temporary. I would plant them in the front of the house and I would put in comfrey, and that's about it. I would probably do raised beds for a garden instead of digging into the soil because I feel like it's easier to understand your soil profile if you're putting in perennials rather than annuals. They have a longer life, so you can doctor the soil and fix the soil and you have a chance to get everything done rather than just having a very short window, which is an annual like spinach, to figure things out. Whereas if I do my raised beds, my raised hotbeds, I already know that they work. I've done them here in Oklahoma. And they're a little bit expensive to set up because I have to bring in my peat moss, but they're very, very predictable in what they will produce. And I've been gardening with them long enough that I have no doubt in being able to produce actual food. And then after having watched the property for a year, that's when I would start to plant fruit trees because I want to see where the water stagnates. I want to see where the water is hard to get, where is it hard to get water to? What dries out fastest, all those kind of things. They're all important to watch for the first year before you plant your fruit trees.
Wayne Clark is in. He says, I was really impressed with your use of dog hair for weaving. Usually just ends up in the vacuum cleaner. Very inspiring. I just wanted to point out that the vacuum cleaner does tend to be a very electric spinning wheel. It winds up very tight in the brushes.
It does wind up very tight in the brushes. Did you want to hand me the brown wool, the brown yarn right there at the top in the blue box?
Yeah, if I can get out of my chair.
So this is the finished product. When I first started out, I felt like it was too inconsistent. This is made out of Australian Shepherd, I think Husky mix was what he was. So this is from that dog, that pet dog, and I think it came out pretty nice. I did dye some of it. I dyed it a red just to see what would happen, but the dyeing process was really hard on it, and the yarn shed or lost more fiber than I wanted it to when I dyed it. So I'm kind of recommending to the owner of the yarn that we not dye it, but that we leave it the natural brown, just because the dyeing process, even though it took the color just fine, it was really hard on the yarn itself.
Remember I was talking about getting seeds started.
It is that time. The man that does the maintenance, our friend Gerardo out at the horses, says that now is a good time to start tomatoes in this area. And so I'm going to go ahead and start some peppers and some tomatoes here pretty quick. My grow light shelf is starting to be filled with a lot of plants that need to be potted up and potted out and spread out, and they would be very happy to be outside at this point. They're getting big enough.
Me senses that we're going to be buying some Rubbermaid containers pretty quick.
Yeah, probably we will.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a portable garden bed out of a Rubbermaid, and it's a self-watering container. And that may be what we need to do. We may need to just put them out on the porch during the day and let them have some air and sunshine and just bring them in at night.
Let's see. Fry Services asked, how do you feel about hugelkultur culture? Is that like the Department of Redundancy Department?
I
Apparently not.
use hugelkultur as far as wood debris in my garden. I do bury carbon, and I do use logs in my compost beds that I turn into hotbeds because I want the carbon to break down slowly. So I do put carbon under soil, but I don't do it in the massive earthworks that hugelkultur really started out as, where it was really these huge mounds of wood and dirt. If I had the equipment to do it, I probably would. But I think in order for hugelkultur to really work, you have to have a lot of free resources and a backhoe, because it takes a vast amount of wood, a vast amount of dead wood or fresh wood, whichever, to make hugelkultur really work. It can't be scant amounts. Otherwise, it just doesn't create enough of a sponge. And so if you have a lot of deadfall on your property, I think it would work amazingly well. Make sure to plan it out so that you're putting your hugelkultur so that it protects your property from wind, and you know, be thoughtful about where you put it so that it's really where you want it, and then do it right. I think don't do it without educating yourself, because it really will create a hill, and you really do want it to be purposeful because it's going to be expensive to put together. That being said, I think you can use those materials in any format, but to be a legitimate hugelkultur, it's going to be earthworks. And I do it quasi hugelkultur in my own small way, but I can't really call it a hugelkultur because I do it in raised beds, if that makes sense.
Let's see. Gardening. Well, let's see. Northern Roots Farms has just sorted out my peppers and tomatoes today. Have 8 to try out this year. I'm excited.
Who do you like to get your seeds from? Just out of curiosity. Mine at this point is parsley, herbs. Everything is pretty much culinary herbs. I'm trying to think if I even have anything planted that just meant to be eaten. I don't think I do at this point. I wanted everything to be pretty small and easily harvested now, rather than needing to put it into bigger and bigger containers without knowing if I was going to have a garden to put it in. Anything else?
Yeah. When Clark is saying, where and how did you gain all this incredible knowledge for so many applications in agriculture? And I just chuckle to myself and say, YouTube, of course.
Yeah, a lot of it was YouTube. When I was a kid, I had some very severe food allergies, and we found that when I could eat raw from the farm food, I wasn't as sick, and I could not drink store-bought milk. And my mom had a cousin who had dairy goats, and so when I was 6 or 7, my mom purchased this goat's milk from our family, and I was able to eat and drink like a normal person, and it was amazing to me. It was really amazing to me because I felt so powerless as a child to be able to live a normal life. And so when I turned, how old was I when I got my first lamb? I was 9 when I got my first lamb as a project. I was 8 when I learned how to spin in 4-H. They taught you how to spin with a pencil and a potato that you turn into a drop spindle. My grandma had a spinning wheel that was for decoration, and she got it fixed up and she gave it to me to use. And when I was 11, I got my first milk goat. I saved up my own money and I bought a kid goat, and her name was Freckles. She was a little alpine, and she was very expensive for me at that time as an 11-year-old. I think she cost me $25 or $35, and it was very expensive as a 9-year-old back in the early 90s. Would that be the early 90s when I was 11?
Late 80s.
Late 80s. So late 80s, and she cost me $25 or $30. And we moved to our farm when I was 12. My parents picked up and moved to a farm because they saw that our health was so much better when we grew our own food. And so from that point on, I educated myself by reading books, any book that I could find about farming and creating your own abundance on your own property. And we had a little homestead when we got married, and we had chickens and ducks and rabbits and goats in our 1/10 of an acre in the middle of the city. And then we moved to the country to 1.5 acres, and that is our most abundant homestead. It's just amazing what you can do on 1.5 acres if you study enough and if you try everything.
That being said, it is also our hardest fought for homestead.
It was a hard fought for homestead. We bought it without looking at the land. We went in the dead of very dead winter in Idaho, where you can't really see anything. The snow was up over the chain link fences, so you couldn't actually see the property.
And yeah, in fact, we closed on the house on Valentine's Day, didn't we?
No, we got into the house. We closed before Christmas. We closed before
we
Christmas.
went into contract before Christmas. We closed on Valentine's Day.
Was it Valentine's Day?
Yeah,
I
it
have
took
no
a
idea.
while. And so everything was under 4 feet of snow for the Christmas looking.
But in the backyard, it was more than 4 feet.
And then, but that was back in February when we could finally move in, and that was a good snow year.
It was a very good snow year.
Everything kept going, but.
So we never saw it. We took the house because it was a good price. It was the amount of land we wanted. But it's why we were doing the series that we are right now about what it's like to search for a homestead and what to look for, is that we went out and assumed that the size of the property was what we wanted. The house was exactly what we wanted. And so, of course, the land was going to be just fine. And it turned out that it wasn't. The land was not just fine. We got everything we knew to look for. We made sure that we had irrigation rights. We made sure that we had a good well. And it's really important in southeast Idaho that you have flood irrigation water, so we knew that we needed that. But sight unseen, our land was not level, and you have to have level land in order to be able to flood irrigate. We had a shallow well, so we couldn't water anything on the property off of the well, and so I had to reinvent the wheel, and the watering system took me years, about 5 years, to invent. And now it works and it's simple and anybody can do it, but the watering system and the fact that we had rocks instead of soil is the reason why I garden the way that I do today, is because you can do it anywhere and you don't have to have soil. You can just build it and bring in your supplies and it works. So this time around, it's why you see me being so picky on these videos about where we want to be and searching for a homestead, because we
don't want to lose another half decade.
We don't want to lose a half decade. We want to just be able to go out there and plant and harvest and to have things set up in a way that we can still lead a normal life instead of being tied down to the homestead.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Aardvark is in.
Hey Aardvark, how are you? I don't even know what anybody's saying because I can't see it.
Well, let's see. Mandolin says, "Yay, that sounds like I have hope for my 2.5 acres." Also,
Yeah.
Congratulations. Dan and her celebrated 3 years together this week.
Oh, good job. Congratulations.
Road less traveled. I've never liked goat's milk, but I'm told that the taste varies. Is that true?
It varies enormously.
Yes.
We've had I grew up on goat's milk and I loved it. And when I was a kid, we couldn't really recreate the flavor of what I drank when I was a really small child in Utah. Even though we had good goats, the milk just really didn't compare to those other goats. And then when we got our goats in the middle of the city, They were terrible. It was like skunk.
Bad.
The flavor was so bad.
Get it into the freezer fast enough to stop that taste.
You really couldn't drink the milk. It's like we had a lawn ornament that we wished we could use the product from. So it took us 3 years to find the goats that we now own and that we now breed, and we don't bring any other genetics into our herd unless we have tasted the milk from like both sides of the genetics, which means that we really haven't brought any new genetics in. We bring in new genetics from the same herd, if that makes sense. We let them breed new stock, and then we go buy new stock from them where they have brought new bucks into their own herd, and then we go get new does from them when we need them. But yeah, it's a really big deal that if you buy a goat, you go and you taste the milk warm and you taste the milk chilled, and anything that you're going to purchase, you need to have tasted the milk.
And milk it yourself.
And milk it yourself, because some goats are much easier to milk than others. Even though all of our goats had good tasting milk, the ones that we have sold have been the ones that had tight orifices or their teats were too short.
You mean in our current herd, right?
In our current herd. The ones we sell are the ones that are hard to milk. And we make that, I mean, our goats, any of our hard milking goats were easier than most goats, but they were just too hard for me because I do knit and spin a lot, and I need a goat that just is incredibly easy to milk. And so our goats were still good. The ones we sold were still excellent goats. They just were too hard for me to milk, and so we sold them.
They love the searching for a homestead. Fry Services says, let's see, really love watching you guys searching for the next homestead. It saves a lot of headaches to see what you really need to do to make an awesome homestead. And your thing with fences is great. No, her thing with the fences is obsessive.
It's not obsessive.
It's obsessive. Because
if your fences don't keep your animals in and they go destroy your neighbor's fruit orchard, then you get to pay to replace that fruit orchard. And if your fences aren't good, you're going to get coyotes that come in. And if your fences aren't good, your kids are going to wander out to the road. So anything that I look at seriously has to have fences, at least fences that I can put electrical fence up.
I can't get my head in there. You did that by design, huh?
No, I didn't.
Yes, but you cannot sleep in your fences. I mean, you
can.
could, but that would be awkward. So
if I was to say yes to a homestead that didn't have fences, it would have to be such a low price that I could very easily go out and put the fences in, have somebody professionally come and put the fences in, that I would have enough money left over after purchasing the home and the property that I could have somebody professionally put the fences in, or at least help me get the corner posts in. The corner posts are the most important part because they are the bracing. When you put any kind of wire on a fence, you have to use a special tool that ratchets it and pulls it tight because your animals are going to weigh it down, they're going to push on it. So your corner posts are what you attach to that you then stretch your fence with. And if you have soggy soil, if you have soil that lets your corner post lean too much, if you don't put the corner posts in right, your whole fence is going to sag. And so if nothing else, it's not that hard to put in T-posts, so I can put in T-posts myself and make sure it's a straight line. You just run a string between your corner posts so that you know that you got it straight. But I would have somebody professional come in and do the corner posts, at least with me, if not for me, because they'll know the soil profile in the area and make sure that we use the right materials, that we use the right a lot of times you need to put gravel in so that the water can drain around those corner posts that are generally wood. There's the bunny making noise. So when you put in a post, if it's going to be wood and it's going to be sitting in water, which it would be in this area, you need to have gravel around it so that the water can drain rather than sitting around the post. So there's just so much that needs to be talked through with a professional if you want your fences to last for 25 years.
Man, well, your audience is agreeing with you. You can tell it's your audience. Mandolin Bradshaw verbalized it perfectly, says, house could be crap in my book, land is number one.
As long as it doesn't have mold or some other health issue, I'm pretty good with it being any old house. It would be nice if it was a super cute house and that there was enough room for everybody, but I find that over over time, you can make a house cute, and you can do it inexpensively, but you can't really fix bad drainage, and you can't really fix black mold very easily. You know, there are certain things in the house that I'm not willing to put up with, it like pipes that leak or floors that are rotting, that kind of thing. So it has to actually be in good condition, but I will put up with a less than wonderful house as far as design in order to have a much lower price so that we're paying the house off faster. Or if the land is absolutely wonderful, I'm okay with that too. That being said, I'm not sure that we have seriously looked at a crap house. I don't think we've seriously looked at a crap one. One that we didn't fit in, or that didn't have good lighting.
A rental in the middle of a whole bunch of dead horses.
Well, we didn't know that at that point. And the house wasn't actually terrible. And the land wasn't terrible. It was the neighborhood that was terrible.
Let's see. Aardvark says, I'm glad you say the condition of the house is not that important.
Yeah, holes in the floors under bathtubs. We put up with a lot. That being said, our last landlord, bless his heart, when I was having problems with the water, he came over and got us a water filter and a Berkey to help us out. So even though there was a hole underneath the bathtub that went into the crawl space, the most important thing, which was something I actually cared about, was it was pretty kind of our last landlord to come and do that. It made a pretty big difference.
Can you tell them a horror story about it?
No, you may not.
Out of Goshen says, hi, it's been a long time.
Hey, Out of Goshen, how are you? Didn't we meet over at...
Goshen.
No.
No?
It was at, I think it was at Danny and Wanda's. Wasn't it at Danny and Wanda's? I think you guys were just starting out back then. Oh, my back is kinking. All right, any more questions?
Yeah, Heath says, dang, I'm glad I grew up on a farm building fences. Best corner post for wet ground in well pipe and concrete buried 4 feet. No,
is.
Well, fine, best is. Corner posts for wet ground in well pipe in concrete buried 4 feet deep with bracing to the other pipe posts 8 feet in each direction.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of those here, is the pipe fencing, and it is filled with concrete, and I've never seen it before.
And it's awesome. It
is amazing. We've had some properties where I was just sold on those fences. Although once they age, it looks like in this area with how much humidity they have, after 20 years, the pipe starts to rust and it will give way, and then you just have bare concrete left and it starts to deteriorate. But that's about the same lifespan as a regular wood post that's been treated. Maybe a wood post wouldn't even last the 20 years. So I think that's fantastic. I've never seen it done. I would love to see how that is done, because they just look super sturdy. The last property that we went and looked at had half of the acreage unfenced. They have a really good horse pasture, but they made it really aesthetically pleasing in that not all of the property is farm. So if we were to buy that one, it would be, we would need to put in probably some temporary electric fences for anything like goats, because all they had strung was barbed wire, but it is intact. It's not drooping on the ground. It's good enough to keep the horses in. The problem you have with fences is that if you don't have enough food inside the pasture, that's when they start to put their heads outside the pasture and they stretch your fences. So all the properties we've looked at recently have been big enough that the horses would probably have a little bit of trouble keeping up with the grass instead of eating the grass down and then stretching their necks over the fence. So that gives you enough time. Having a larger property gives you enough time to keep up on repairing fences and keeping them healthy, rather than having a small property where they eat it quickly and then you can't keep up with the repairs.
Okay, Wayne Clark. I am seeing what's going on. Go ahead and Go ahead and send your email address when you see that when we're about to sign off, and it will stay hidden again, and I will make sure that we have that to get back to you on this. So, let's see.
The other thing I would like is that if we do get a property, most of them are not perfect. We're in a price range where we can't expect perfection. We want to be able to pay that mortgage off quickly, so we're trying not to go high. And what I'm hoping is that there are some channels here locally that we've done some videos with. And for instance, in one of the properties we looked at, there was a supporting post in the barn, only one that needs to be replaced, but it does need to be replaced. It's worn away at the bottom of the post. And I don't know how to safely replace that. It's not bearing weight right now because it has worn away at the bottom enough, but it is something that I would like to know how to do. And so what I'm hoping is that we could do some videos with other channels who I know have those skills in exchange for doing some videos on our channel and letting people know about what great skills they have. Similar to what we did with Darwin and Melanie, or with Essential Mountain Homesteading, or Road to the Farm, those channels that we did work with. So I would love to do some of that bartering and helping people with their channels in exchange for having them teach me some of the things I don't know how to do. That's one of the ways I gained the skills that I do have, is that there's nothing wrong with asking for help as far as learning. And as long as you're out there helping and not just kind of staring and being a whiny butt, usually people are really kind to teach you how to do the things that they're good at. That's what I have found anyway.
Northern Roots says, one of my biggest pet peeves is animals on too small of properties.
Yeah. One of the things we found, and I think one of the reasons that Joel Salatin is so popular, is that he's shown that you don't need a huge amount of property. It's how you manage your property, not how much there is. So for instance, on our property, we had so much pasture on an 1.5 acres with 6 to 8 herbivores. So it would be sheep or goats, or sheep and goats. And we had enough pasture that we could add a pony in to one of our sections of property without taking any of our normal pastures out of rotation. And we generally don't even graze the whole first 3/4 of an acre on our property because of the way that we manage it. We do not allow the animals just to free range. There isn't just a big property. We keep them mob grazing. So we take one animal and we tether, and the reason we tether is because we can't get fence posts into our property. It's made out of cobblestones this big that you cannot get a post into. We had a really hard time sinking the post that we have our calf shed. We had to have corner posts for our calf shed that we use for hay and goats in the winter. We had a very hard time getting those in. And so for normal fence posts, we couldn't get those in, but we can, for whatever reason, if the pasture's wet enough, we can get in stakes that are like tie-out stakes for dogs. So we have our main fence, our perimeter fence, to keep dogs and things out. And then we have grazing stakes, and we move the goats. They're in one spot for anywhere for 3 days to a week. And we move the goats to the new spot, and they graze it all down to about knee height on a goat. And then we move them. And then we have, most of our 1.5 acres is not even in pasture. About maybe a half of our property is actually in pasture.
Annelle says the bunny sounds like he wants on YouTube.
I know, he is very noisy.
Yes. John Wolf, will electric keep the animals off the fence? Yep.
It depends.
Well, okay.
We have had goats that went through a fence because we allowed them as babies to play on the other side of the fence. And so as babies, they knew they could get through that fence. So as they got older, they knew that if they just ran through the fence, that it wouldn't shock them. And so it really depends in the beginning. If you're going to use electric, you need to train your animals well, that it bites, and that running through the fence does not keep them from getting bit by it.
We've heard stories of piglets that realized that they could get through, and so you could hear them start to squeal as they talk themselves into making a run for it.
Yeah, they learned that if they just run fast enough that it can't bite them, and so they go through it instead of staying in. So you do have to train them well. And the other thing is, if your ground is not wet enough, you don't get a good enough charge. That was one of the problems we had with our fencer, was that the place where we had sunk our ground
Was rock.
And it was rock and so dry that we could not get a good charge on the fence. And you also need to have a fencer that has a strong enough charge for the animal you're trying to keep in. You have a different charge for a bull than you do for chickens.
Northern Words reminds us that we had pigs that way.
We did?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
They went right through.
Escape artists.
Not a good time.
And part of that is that if it doesn't shock them hard enough the first time, they don't really notice it and they don't know what it is. And if you also don't have it marked well enough so that they can see it and associate the fence with the shock, then once again, they don't know what got them, so they don't know how to react correctly to it. So it is all about training them. I do recommend woven wire fence, a perimeter fence that you just have an electric line on the inside of, so that you have that physical barrier along with the electric barrier. I don't recommend just using electric, because then if something misfunctions with the electric, your animals are free to go wherever they want to go, and that can turn into some really sad stories.
Mandel's asking, have you tried a swing picker? I have, and so far I like it. Wool, back to wool.
Oh, I have not. I have not. The one that I looked at looked so expensive that I wasn't sure if it was worth using, because of it. For one thing, because of the way that I like to spin. I want the locks to stay in line with each other so that I can comb them instead of brushing them. And so I don't use it because, number one, the expense, and number two, because it does not fit well with the type of wool that I'm making.
I think he is just
A
realizes
delight?
he's the center of attention right now. with
He
all
is a
this down here.
delight. I think it's
Looking
actually
at him.
too hot in here for him.
Could be.
That's what I think.
Fry services. Will you guys be raising pigs on your next homestead?
I love to raise pigs. I prefer to raise pigs in the winter instead of the summer, because then I don't have to keep them cool, and they like to stay inside their fence where the food and the warm straw is, instead of wanting to get out and go explore the neighborhood. The other thing is, I would like to be able to graze pigs, and at this point, in my opinion, you have to have a better layout, a better idea of what you're going to do with your property if you're going to have pigs, because you do need to rotate them in a manner appropriate for your land, because their little feet will hard pack your soil if you leave them in there for too long, and they will root up your grass if you leave them in there for too long. And so I absolutely love having pigs, but I feel a lot of responsibility for their well-being, and they can be a little bit complicated because they're super smart, and it takes a certain kind of fence to keep them in, and you really have to keep them cool. My understanding, if I remember, is it pigs that don't sweat? You have to have them have shade for them, you have to have water for them, and if you put them in a muddy pit, then they just make that muddy pit bigger, and it can kind of ruin the look of your property if you leave them in there too long. So
They just need a swimming pool.
yeah, we had a swimming pool for them at our other place, but we also had rocks and not mud. And so it was kind of hard for them to really make a mess out of our property in the space where we had them. But we did have them under the trees, and we did have a swimming pool for them. And the breed that we got was a grazing breed rather than a rooting breed. And so I'm just not really familiar with what kind of livestock is best here. There are better livestock for different areas, and I'm just not familiar with that part of Oklahoma life yet. And the animals that I've seen on Craigslist, I have not been impressed with, not really. It seems to all come from one crazy lady, and she looks like a hoarder, and she looks like she doesn't necessarily take very good care of her animals. And that's not the lady that I want to be buying animals from, so I'm not really sure what to do about that. Oh, I didn't switch
And
it
she
soon.
probably just popped out of the channel.
I don't know. Maybe.
Let's see. House prices.
What's the question?
Oh, we started talking about houses and Zillow. Yes, we have to use Zillow, by the way. Realtor.com seems to be a good one as well.
Yeah, I didn't think that their lot sizes were accurate, though. We had some discrepancies there where Zillow would say one thing and then Realtor would say something different. But I would say that we have used a realtor. Every time we've bought a homestead, we've used a realtor. And the reason is some of the legalities, you just don't know what they are going in. And we had some places that we thought were really cute where we got into it and then the realtor looked at us and said, no, this is not the one you want. This is not the area that you want. This is not the one you want. So let's keep looking.
This is not the
What?
home you were looking for. That's all. Oh, that's gonna be
I
fun.
thought maybe I had a
No, my
spider
delay,
or something
my
in front of
delay
my...
on the phone is gonna be fun when you like jump. So, this is not the homes you were looking for. That's what it
Well, and I really was happy.
just popped up.
I really was very happy to be in town or out of town. I really didn't care. As far as I do wish that we were closer to some neighbors, because I would like the kids to be able to have friends to play with that kind of fills their cup. But the houses that we've been looking at recently don't have neighbors, and that's what John likes about them. John is super excited because some that we've been looking at will never have development. We are the only tiny little piece that they would want to sell in the middle of 1,000 acres of property. And so it's a matter of, he really wants his solitude. I don't really care.
But I want to be less than 5 minutes from work.
Yes,
or
he
the
wants-
big city. Yes.
It has to be very close to
Not
work,
hard
but
to
no
please,
neighbors.
I promise you.
Solitude. So he can shoot everything. But
Or-
I have loved some of the bigger properties we've gone to see that are quite secluded. I love the properties, and I am thinking very hard about what we would do for the girls for socialization. And what we'll have to do is we'll probably have to go become members of all the churches in the area, because when you homeschool, church is pretty much your social outlet, and I'm okay with that. And I'll just have to be really upfront with them and saying, yes, we are Christians and we love God, and we're going to be members of every church in the area so that the girls have a good social outlet. And we hope you don't think that we're apostates and terrible for doing that, but we need all the activities we can get for these girls.
It's going to be hard to get to every one of the churches when they all start at 10:30.
That
Just
is
saying.
true. Very true.
One on each day.
Shh. Remember, not during live streams, please.
Ha! Mandolin agrees with me this time. She says, I'm a John. Give me space. Amen.
Well, some of these we are so excited to show you. We have a couple. One of them we went to 4 weeks ago, I think. And it was 20 acres, and it was fully fenced. They had these enormous cows out there, and the cows kept the lawn mowed, and everything was fenced, so there was nothing for them to do. And they had a really nice wood-burning stove in the house. It was a cute house, but at that point we thought it was too far to drive.
Yep.
Now the ones we're looking at
Are
are
as far.
even further.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of funny.
Right.
But we do have some really fun drone footage of some of the 20-acre properties. And they had good barns and everything. That one, I think the price was quite a bit too high. We went and looked at it just to have looked at it, but the price was really quite high. And it would have had to have the perfect house on it and the perfect distance to work in order for us to make that one work. If that one had been right next to Tulsa and had seclusion for John and kids for the girls to play with and everything else, we probably would have paid the price and we would have bought it. But it didn't. It had a lot of things, but it wasn't perfect.
Let's see. Mandolin says she's sorry she couldn't come visit. She had to help Thursday.
Yeah, and our weekends are so nutty. We will be last week we didn't go look at anything just because we were so tired. Because the house hunting, when you have to drive that far in so many different directions, is really fatiguing. And so we have mistreated all of our friends lately. I haven't seen Bobby in like weeks. I went and saw her yesterday morning because I just couldn't handle it. I needed to get out of the house and I hadn't seen her in weeks, so we went and saw some of her projects.
And now you're not even answering Nikki's phone calls.
Oh, and Nikki tried to call me during the live stream and now I feel terrible. I need to call Nikki back. So we have been terrible friends the last couple, 3-4 weeks. Well, this has been so intense, because the thing is, I need to get this homestead set up before I go back to Idaho if I want to put a garden in this year. If I don't care about putting a garden in this year, there's no rush. There's just really no rush. But if I'm going to be serious about this, and it looks like we are very serious about this because we've talked about it, and John really doesn't want to go back to Idaho. And I don't, the more I research,
go back to rocks, dude.
The more I research what you can plant in Oklahoma, the more excited I get about gardening here. And I'm trying really hard to just let that excitement grow so that I don't think about my Idaho homestead as much anymore. What? Did he say something snarky again?
No, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So what exactly is, quote, John doing that needs all this privacy?
I don't know. I don't know.
Shooting.
He just doesn't like people, which is really funny because he's a very social person.
I thought about it. I was gonna, well, in fact, somebody had my sentiments exactly. They Twitter messaged to Elon Musk saying, hey, you know, could you just shoot me into space on that rocket? I thought the idea sounded very novel. Just get me away from people, and that's about as far as you can get.
Which is so funny, because John really is a social butterfly in our relationship. He loves people, but when he's home...
He's like Gunner.
Shh. He does not want to hear traffic. That's one of the things he really doesn't want.
Or people.
He doesn't want people.
I don't want to hear other people's life. I like my own.
He is, yeah. and so it's one of the reasons why some of these properties we're looking at are really very, very exciting. They belong to trusts that they're never going to sell the property around the one that we're looking at. And so he would have eternal, it's the only place we've looked so far that you cannot hear or see traffic. You can't hear it. It just looks like a beautiful prairie wasteland. And so
right, Shannon exactly nailed it. She said, don't need their drama. Correct.
Well, that
I got
is
my
true.
own.
We got our own.
Let's see.
Although John does want to have a shooting range. He does want to have somewhere that he and the girls can practice without having to drive and then pay $15 a head in order to shoot. And
only go 200 yards.
And only
That's
go 200
the other part
yards.
for no other people.
We are looking very seriously into trying to put in a root cellar / storm shelter that's big enough that we can put potatoes and apples and things in them. But we're going to need to do a lot of research on it. A lot of the houses we've looked at do have storm shelters. And we meant to go get video of that, of what you're looking at when you're looking at storm shelters here. And why a normal root cellar doesn't necessarily work, and it's because the groundwater's high and the rain comes down and your root cellar is very quickly underwater. Unless, I think if you could dig in just a little bit and then berm up around your root cellar, then you wouldn't have it underwater, but it would still be kept cool enough by the soil that it could work as a root cellar. But I think you'd have to build it into a hill, or build it at the top of a hill and then berm over the top of it to create your own artificial hill. I think that's the only way you could do it here without having water in it constantly.
Yeah, you kind of touched on that, because Kathleen Schaefer was just asking why no basements.
Water.
Lots of water.
It rains here a lot.
People have drowned.
And
people have drowned in their tornado shelters trying to hold out the tornado.
Well, that's what the above ground tornado shelter people told us.
No, well.
But the other thing is, in some parts of this area, you have like bedrock, where you have flint and other very big, large layers of rock underneath the soil that's very difficult to get through in order to put in a root cellar or basement. So the cost there is prohibitive. And the clay moves. There's a lot of sinking homes in this area that we said no to because they were sinking, and the foundations were not real stable because the clay just kind of slips along on its own little way. Here, it's actually better to have a crawl space with piers underneath than it is to have a solid foundation. If you have a solid foundation, the solid foundation cracks and your house comes apart in the middle. If you have piers, then you go under and you replace a pier. You jack your floor up, put in under another pier underneath, and it fixes the problem, and it's much less expensive than trying to fix a solid foundation. We're learning so much. Our realtor is very smart.
Definitely.
And it's why a lot of houses are really inexpensive in this area, is that they have floors that are sinking.
Because you could start the night in one corner of the bedroom and roll down to the other one by the end of the night. Yes.
Which is really sad because some of these homes are beautiful. So they put in French drains. And cheap. So they put in French drains in order to try and help the water to move away from the property. A lot of times building up on a hill can help, but then the clay itself settles, so the house is actually kind of sliding down the hill a little bit, very, very slowly, but it's still moving down the hill. So that's been, again, an education.
Let's see. Wayne Clark has been asking and talking about earthbag homes for a bit.
Okay, so we have a friend named Kelly. Oh, what's Kelly's last name? In New Mexico, it wasn't Silver City, it was Deming, Silver City. Is it Natural Buildings that is his website? I'm trying to think. I'll see if I can put that up in a link. I probably won't remember, but if I don't remember, email me and remind me. And he actually wrote a book about how to build earthbag homes. And we got to go out and see one of his earthbag homes out in the middle of the desert and see how it stood up. He did build an earthbag home years ago, but he doesn't live in it now. That's the thing that I always look at when people are experts about something. Do they live in it themselves still? Are they still there? Now, sometimes it's by, people have to move because of work or something like that. But in their new place that they go to, are they doing exactly the same thing? So, Kelly, I'm trying to remember what his name is, his last name. He did love to do alternative building in his younger days. And what he ended up in his senior retirement years doing is he lives in an adobe, not an earthbag home. And, but I think as a senior, a lot of times what you need to have be maintenance free is important. And so what he was willing to experiment with as a younger man, maybe he wasn't as interested in doing things that unconventionally as he was needing to maintain them in his late 70s and early 80s. So there is kind of that to think about. If you're going to do something, try and be mindful of your senior years. It's why we like to do smaller property, is because I don't want to have a big property to maintain when I'm older. I want things to be pretty straightforward and easy to maintain. And maybe that's foolish. Maybe that's like thinking a little too far ahead because you have some really productive years in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. But I always look at it and think, can I make this as easy and efficient as I can now so that when I'm in my 80s, I can still do it? Make it take care of itself.
Barbara Nelson, will you sell your other home?
Not if I can help it.
Let's see. Kathleen Carrington says, John, sliding foundations, the rocks of Idaho don't sound all that bad as you make it. No, they sound worse. I promise you, you cannot plant another rock in there and have it survive. Just saying.
So, yes, we have lots of basements. We have a daylight basement in our house in Idaho, and it is the joy of my life. I love that basement. And we didn't have to have a root cellar because we had the basement. We just, part of the basement was our root cellar. And as long as you don't have central heating, that works really well. We did not have central heating in that house. We had, what are they called?
Wood stove?
Well, we did have the
baseboard.
baseboard. We had baseboard
We never
heat.
used them.
Yeah, we never used
we
them.
had 'em.
We had baseboards in the house, and it's why we immediately had a wood stove. Well, we had the wood stove in the basement too.
That's strange.
But if you can kind of choose the heat in between your rooms in your basement, then you can just leave the heat down as low as you want to and heat the upstairs. And then your whole basement can be a root cellar if you want it to be. It's about not having that central heating that's going to heat up your root cellar. That's not going to heat up your basement. Yes, Annie?
Shannon says, I'm sure rocks have babies. Yes, but
Our
not
rocks
in,
back home have
but
babies.
not in Idaho. It's too cold. Just
Our
saying.
rocks have babies back in Idaho. We always have a new layer of rocks.
No, they all have new adults. Somehow they just multiply, and they're all
I love
ginormous.
Idaho.
They're all huge
John is
rocks.
also a native of Idaho. I do not understand the hate for Idaho because I love it so much.
Me neither.
Warm here.
It's warm there in the summer for 3 days.
For 3 whole, yes, it does. It touches 90 degrees at least 3 days a year.
Dad,
And then it's 2.
you love the heat down here as long as you can enjoy it from the air conditioner.
Are you talking in a live show?
Yes.
Yes.
And Nappy said yes. I have my inside job now with my inside air conditioning.
And that's why it is, I am having a hard time with it. I don't understand it. John doesn't like to be outside very much. And we love to be outside, and so
I love to be outside when
I
it's
don't
not
understand.
cold. 11 and a half months of cold. 3 days of hot leaves you, hold on,
you just put on
a
another
week and a
layer.
half. Leaves you a week and a half of decent weather.
In the summer, you can't take your skin off. But in the winter, you can just put another layer
Put more
on.
Yes, until you roll down the stairs. Because you can't move. Donna
have
just
to have
moved
the
to
right
Boise
tools.
from Northern California. See, that would be a good move. I would move to Boise from NorCal. Or SoCal. Let's see. Yes, Wayne says it right. Baseboard heat will make you homeless. So
Yeah,
true.
we never turned it on. I don't know how the renters afford it because they're not using the wood stove. But they just don't turn the heat up very much, and they've got enough people in that house that it just keeps them warm, I guess. But we always used wood heat, and it worked really well for us.
Yeah, here's the other thing. Cynthia Fisher says Boise area here. Everyone and their dog is moving here from California. Exactly. We've got to get further away from the invasion.
No.
Yes. Let's see. Fanny Pandora, cold weather kills everything off so you don't get giant mosquitoes, spiders, or alligators.
Well, we do get giant
I was gonna
spiders
say, and mosquitoes.
and mosquitoes.
Explain those mosquitoes to
The
us.
first thing I want to do when I get to Idaho in May is I want to put up screening around the deck and figure out how to have opening and closing clear plastic shutters so that we can block the wind out but allow the light in when it's cold, but that in the summer when we want to let the cool in and keep the cabin cool, I can open up those clear plastic shutters so that we can get the breeze flowing through. So that's my first big project. And a lot of what I do when I have a project coming is I draw it up and I do it in pretty pencils, and I just sit there and dream and I draw it and I redraw it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is I've got trees to cut down when I get home to make the watering simpler for the renters, because this year, this is the first summer I won't be there to help them with the water. I'm just setting it up for them. So I'm taking out several of the water lines and I'm cutting down a lot of trees that don't need to be there. Aesthetically, it will make a difference, but I just, if I want the things that I really care about to survive, I need to make it as easy as I can for her to keep up on it. What I'd like to do is have an intern come and live in the tiny cabin for the summer and do all the yard work and train them for a couple weeks and then let them live in the cabin rent-free for the summer and keep everything going. I would love to do that. But the thing is, with the woofer program, you have to be there as the farmer. You have to be there teaching them what you do, and I will only be there for 4 weeks. So I'm trying to figure out if I can make that work somehow, to find an intern or apprentice or somebody that wants to keep fruit trees alive and water them in exchange for staying in an off-grid cabin. I know when I was in my teens and 20s, I would have died to have that opportunity to live off-grid and just spend my days playing with goats and watering fruit trees. The only thing is with the renters there, they do have a family, and I can't have somebody there that's intrusive or inappropriate or immodest or
Like
obnoxious.
What teens and 20 hipsters tend
Yeah,
to be?
exactly. When we did our woofers, and we had our woofers come the summer before we went on our big trip, I put in the description that you can't be walking around in shorty shorts. You're going to be modest around my family, and you're not going to be drinking, and you're not going to be smoking on the property. You got to do that off the property. So.
I think it's just put it on a billboard at a college.
Well, I don't know. I think if I were to kind of actually put it together and make a video, like a real video, and say looking for somebody who wants to live off-grid for the summer, rent-free. I think if I were to do up a video and word it right, I'd probably find somebody pretty quickly. But at this point, I'm trying to figure out if my renter wants somebody there. If I can cut enough trees down and remove enough water lines, then I think she can manage it by herself. But I don't want to cut too many trees down. I feel bad that these trees have done so well for me, and now that I would go in and butcher them, it makes it a little bit bittersweet. Essential, but bittersweet. Because half a job, or a job poorly done, that half kills all the trees is definitely not what I want. I want her to be able to do a good job on the ones that I care the most about, if that makes sense.
We were just talking about this yesterday. Wayne Clark says new buyers came through within 1 month, increased my rent 500%. $315 in one swoop. Hundreds of people / low income displaced by being priced out of their home. Remember a California talk about you can't add on a room?
Oh yeah, Kirsten Dirksen, she's a tiny house alternative housing lady here on YouTube. If you haven't seen her, go check her out. Kirsten Dirksen. She just did a video, I think it was in San Francisco, about how it costs $120,000 to add on one room to a home, and that people are getting around that by putting sheds in their backyard that work as extra rooms to the house, but they don't have electricity and they don't have water, and that way they're not living in them. They're just using them as extra space, because the regulations there are so bad that you can't do anything with your own property, and if you have a rental, you can't afford to rent it to people in a way that there's actually enough room for them, because you've got these little barrack type homes that were from, what would it have been?
60s.
From the 1960s, these little bungalows that are just too small. So it's just very interesting. I will say that I love my little off-grid cabin. I think it's a really good experience, and I love being able to... He's so noisy!
And thirsty. I wonder why he's decided to...
Stop drinking. No, he drinks a lot every day. Even with all that fiber off of him, he's still... I think he's too warm in the house.
Well...
Are you almost done? Are you almost done? Come on.
I think he's only getting a drop.
No, don't squeeze it.
He's trying to get his 6 glasses in a day, but he's getting it all right now.
Right?
He only gets 1 drop at a time.
Okay.
It's like,
Shh, shh.
Let's see.
Um,
Watering system with an app could be done.
Yeah, I've seen people that do that. Oh, when we went over to see Arms Family Homestead, their local grower uses an app. Our system would not work that way because we use a gas generator type ditch pump. But what I was saying about the tiny house is...
Cynthia says maybe he's diabetic.
Oh, the bunny? It could be.
Get him some insulin.
We need to get him into a wire cage instead of the wood cage. Wood cages are not good for rabbits. So my favorite thing about being in a tiny house that's made out of a shed is that I can do whatever I want to do with it. It was so inexpensive, and the sky is so much the limit that when I have an idea for a project, I just do it. and most projects cost me less than $100 because the space is so small. And so I learn all my skills that I want to use on my main house by playing with it on my pretend house.
So TLC's in.
Oh, we have missed you. We were talking about you last week. We're like, what are they doing?
Yeah. He says the girls are looking so much older.
I know. Paige is taller than me.
Let's see.
Don't talk about it.
Shannon Graber, does he drink like that at night? Yes. 3:15 a.m. usually. So.
But, okay, so for those of you who don't know TLC, they bought...
No, he's right here.
Oh, okay.
With the wrench. He's
well,
good.
we call him TLC. Todd and Lisa. He's going to start again. Paige, can you go fill up his little water container that is not the drip system? It's right there underneath his bridge. Move quickly. Todd and Lisa, back in the day, the girls were super excited about learning how to sew.
They,
And Todd and Lisa bought them for their birthday, I think.
Yeah.
A couple of little play sewing machines, and the girls still use them. They make their own clothes on them.
Yeah.
And it's pretty neat. So Todd and Lisa were pretty important part of our channel and of our family there when the girls were super little. So it's really fun to see Todd in.
He says Lisa hates how you can spin without watching what you're doing.
Oh, it depends on the fiber. If I'm doing dog fiber, I cannot. Dog fiber is really expensive for me to make because the fibers are so short that they don't cling to each other as well as they need to. And so as long as I have something that's a reasonably long fiber, I don't need to look in order to be able to spin. Now that you say that, I'm like, am I doing this right?
Ooh. Daughter of Dorcas is also in.
Hi, how are you? All of our favorite people are on tonight.
She says we're getting a big snowstorm in central Idaho.
Are they?
This, that, and the rocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I am so excited to be here in Oklahoma. I get to try something very different. It does not decrease the love of my Idaho homestead one bit, but it does appeal to my sense of adventure. I do get very excited about seeing what is possible, and especially in growing food and growing clothing and that kind of thing. So the thing I feel the most about being here in Oklahoma is I'm so excited to try these things that I've wanted to grow for so long that I couldn't in Idaho.
You should see her going through seed catalogs.
Yes.
That's pretty fun.
I get very excited about pawpaws because you can't ship them, so most people haven't ever tasted one, but they're native to this area, and I'm so excited. I am. But also, daughter of Dorcas, her dad has this, what? Yes, but I always feel like I can't share their names.
I know.
Just for privacy's sake.
And then they share it, and
we went with what?
Sorry.
We went with what?
So then they think that we forgot their names.
Think that we forgot. No, I'm just trying to give privacy.
Yes.
We went over to see Lisa twice. The first time by accident. We were in the area and we wanted to see her little homestead, and while we were there, she's like, you know, you really need to go see my dad's place. And we're like, okay, we can go see your dad's place. I did not know what we were going to be looking at. He's the one that built those enormous round wood cabins, like the castle type cabins, and they are blow your mind amazing. And we went and saw everything we could get to in their town, and but the thing that we fell in love with the first time was his garden. His garden was phenomenal, and the grapes were like out of Canaan. Remember how they talked about in Canaan that the bunches of grapes were so big and heavy that it took 2 men to carry 1 cluster? Well, his garden was pretty much like that. The grapes were enormous. The plums were enormous. What else did we get? There were apples.
Pears.
Did you? No, honey, just put it up. No. Honey, stop trying to attach it and just leave it there under that and he'll get to it.
He'll knock it over.
Right, but you have to close the door before you put it in. Honey, you're about to, no, honey, it cannot tip.
Okay.
Because he'll get wet. So one thing about Angora rabbits is they can't get wet or their fiber mats up, and it's very difficult to keep them mat free if you have freestanding water in there. And Unfortunately, we just had a spill in the cage. So, Paige, is there any water on the floor in there now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, so undo the whole twist tie. Take the whole twist tie off. And what you're going to do next is you're just going to put the bowl inside so that he can drink it, okay?
She says yesterday was his 76th birthday.
Wow, he's something else.
It was amazing. Kathleen Carrington is asking, are you going to any conferences?
Nope.
You.
Not if I can help it. I love all the people who are doing all the conferences, and I am having to save my strength for the number. Kate, nope, you're going to put it in the corner where it won't tip over, not right where he's trying to walk, and you're going to put it in a flat spot. We're not going to put it on a hill of bedding. You're not going to put it on a hill of bedding. Nope. Put it next to the food. Put it next to the food after you move the bedding. Move all bedding so that it can lay flat.
It's got to make riveting.
It's going to make riveting a real life chore. Wow. Please think through this before you get the rabbit wet information. Thank you, honey. Now you can close it.
Let's see. So what does a pawpaw taste like? I've never had one.
Kaya, please stop. It is called a custard apple, if I am remembering it correctly. It's supposed to have like the texture of pudding, the flavor of banana, and it has these big black seeds in it. Like this. Big black seeds in it. And it looks a little bit like a mango. But they do not ship well, and so unless you're native to an area that has them growing natively, you will never have tried them because they're too soft to ship. By the time they're ripe, they're too soft.
Danny Bull says hi.
Hello, hello, how are you?
Let's see. Todd says, so moving to Oklahoma, eh?
Well, we're already here.
No, that's Canada, eh? Sorry, go ahead.
We're already here, and this is the second year that we've been here during the winter. So I think we're getting settled in. But after having been back and forth that many times,
we're horrified to find we're putting down roots.
I'm not horrified. I love putting down roots. I am excited for the challenge. But I don't do well without having a garden and fruit trees, and I long so much for Idaho when I'm here that John finally was like, we need to just get a place, because you going back and forth like this and wanting to stay in Idaho and never come back makes me nervous. Is that a correct way to put that?
Sure.
Because when I'm in Idaho, we talk on the phone all day, and if he's not at work or in school, and the girls get really attached to being in Idaho, and unless we can put roots down, it just gets harder to leave Idaho every fall. So if we're going to be in Oklahoma, we might as well be in Oklahoma and really do it, rather than going back and forth like this. And if I'm going to put my heart roots down, I have to have some dirt. I can't do it in an apartment. And I can't do it in a rental either.
So we'll finally get a house, and she'll just roll on the front lawn like a chicken and do her dust bath.
I probably will.
Kathleen Carrington's on her way out, so have a good night, ma'am.
Big hit by
enjoy your week. Let's see. Todd said, what are we going to do with the Idaho property? Not
just keep
sure.
it.
Yeah.
Just keep it. We have good renters, and if she can keep the fruit trees alive this year, if I take most of the trees out that are not fruit trees and just have her water the things that are absolutely essential, I think she can do it. And they're good renters. They're on time with their rent.
Yeah.
We're just really happy with them. So if they're willing to stay, we're willing to have them stay. If they were to decide that they wanted to move out, that would cause some real thinking and some replanning. So as long as they want to stay there, we don't have to worry about trying to figure anything else out.
But if just in case she's watching, if they wanted to purchase, we would be ecstatic.
No.
I don't really think so, because I have spent so much time on that property, and I have it perfected to such a point that if we ever wanted to move back, I would be heartbroken at having to do that on a different property. I'd rather just do it where I already am.
So let's see. Luna Bell Bunny. Later questions. How do you handle the animals and trees on the property? Do you tell them what to do, or are they free to do what they wish?
So this will be the third summer that I will have gone back. So the past 2 summers, I go back to Idaho and I do all the watering and I take care of all of the plants. They have taken care of the animals, and we sold the difficult animals before they moved on to the homestead. We sold most of the poultry, we sold all but 2 of the rabbits, and the only thing left was 2 milk goats. And so we kept it very simple for them when they first started. Any livestock that they purchased since then, they purchased themselves. And they buy the hay for the goats themselves. And I provide money to run the irrigation system. And until this year, I have gone home and done all the irrigating. So this will be the first year that they will be doing all of that themselves. I will go home and set up the watering system and help them for the first 4 weeks, and then I'm coming back home here. So they will be taking care of all of that, which is why I need to take a lot of trees down when I go home to Idaho. I need to take a lot of trees down because the sheer number of trees that I'm willing to water makes it difficult for somebody who isn't really into trees to feel like they want to do it correctly, and I want to make it as easy for her to do correctly as possible. Oh, and if we do have a home purchased, by the time I leave, then I will bring 2 baby goats back if there are any does born this spring. We'll have baby goats that we could put in a dog crate and drive back here, so we would have our own goats and the start of our own herd here in Oklahoma.
Oh, interesting. Kathleen Schaefer says those thin dirt areas on the side of a hill might be good for herbs because it tends to be dry and hot. Good for prickly pear and cactus.
Really?
We could try that. On top of the storm shelter would also be a place that didn't have much.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking
water.
was, if we do put in a storm shelter, I would think it would be interesting to use that space as a different planting biome.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Tim Crusham says pawpaws grown in Ohio. I have some seeds in the freezer, as the guy I got them from told me to do before planting. So you freeze them before you plant them.
It is a cold stratification.
Gotcha.
I have heard that pawpaws are super hard to get started, and what I have found with plants that are super hard to get started is to overplant, and then something will survive. But if you don't overplant, then you lose a whole year of growing. So whenever I have something new, I get way more than I actually need, and then that allows me to see what they need to survive and to notice what I did differently for those that do survive. And then if there's too many of them at that point, I can dig them up and sell them to somebody else. But I believe with the pawpaw, you have to be very, very careful of the taproot, that it has an extraordinarily sensitive and tender root system, and so it's hard to transplant them. So for me, if I get around to planting pawpaws, I would plant seedlings, as many seedlings as I can afford, and I would also plant seeds. And that way I can watch and see which one is the most successful. And I would probably even buy a couple of expensive $50 trees from a local nursery and put those in too and see who does the best. Along with that, you'll also get different types of fruit sets. They'll probably all taste different. Sometimes seedlings can have a lot of different flavors in between the trees because they are seedlings instead of grafted. And so that's what I like to do, is I like to seriously overplant, because you're always going to have loss. You're always going to have something that doesn't succeed. But most of what I plant is very inexpensive. If I'm going to plant, I will get it from coldstreamfarm.net is the wild crafting place that I get my trees from. And so most of what I'll plant will be from them. And then I will plant 1 or 2 that is expensive from the nursery that has a very good warranty on it, so that they can walk me through how to make them work. And so I do it from different sources, but I plant it all at the same time. And that way you'll learn something, and something will survive.
Don't remember who was asking. Somebody asked, where are pawpaws native to?
This region,
Which is
like not just
like
Oklahoma.
the Midwest?
Yeah.
Okay. Kathleen Schaefer says, might see if they have a native plants nursery. They have a bunch of nurseries around here.
Well, the one that I buy from, I believe they're in Ohio. Is it Ohio or Michigan? Coldstreamfarm.net. They have, I believe if they don't have pawpaws, I know they have mulberries. They have a lot of really, really great trees there. And where I have seen pawpaws listed has been in Rain Tree. Is it Rain Tree Nursery? Rain Tree Nursery has a lot of the interesting exotics, and they have them in a lot of different varieties with different grafting on them. I know they have pawpaws, but I will be doing a lot of research with the local nursery to find out what they say about it, because the trees that we did the best with, that actually ended up costing us the least in the end, were the local nursery trees, not from Lowe's, not from Home Depot, because they don't know what they're doing, and they bring in a lot of pests. Lowe's and Home Depot, do not buy from them. If you're going to buy expensive trees that have been potted, buy them from your local nursery. Are your blisters bugging you?
Yes, very much.
Okay, so get me the spray.
Where's that? And it will interrupt the live show.
Here, put this back in the shelf for me, okay? And then we'll spray you.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Hi with Mike. I have 3 pawpaw trees planted in my area of Florida. Still young fruit trees, so no fruit yet.
Yeah, I've heard that they can be very picky. Once they get established, they'll spread and you'll have like a thicket of them. That's my understanding. But as far as planting them and getting them established, that's supposed to be really, really tricky.
Amanda was asking, are you going to breed Angoras?
I don't think so. The thing that I use the most with rabbits is their manure. I cannot ever seem to get enough. And so we need to get out to a property where we have a shed to hang rabbits in, so that they're up off the ground, so we're not getting snakes and rats and coyotes in them. And that just takes time, and I want to do it slowly enough that we can take care of the animals and not just boom, suddenly be breeding things. I really, for one thing, in one of the places we went and looked, they have a big shed, big barn with several stalls, but it's quite dark. I would like to whitewash it so that it's easier to see into the corners, because they do have snakes here, and I would like to just have greater visibility. Honey, why don't you go put on your pajamas? Maybe it's the clothes that are affecting the blisters. Okay. So I think that breeding anything is going to have to wait till next year if we get into a house this year. I still have to go to Idaho in May, and I want to leave as few animals as possible for John to take care of while I'm gone, which means we may be down to 2 rabbits and just the ponies. And we'll still, in order for me to have all of that finished before I leave in May, we still would have a lot of work cut out for us. And if we don't get a property at all, if we don't end up getting into a house this spring, then I've got to figure out what I'm doing about animals, because John won't be able to drive out to take care of the horses more often than maybe every 3 days. And so the rabbits at that point would not work out in the barn, and I'd have to find some other alternative for the rabbits. So it just kind of depends on what happens here in the next couple weeks, because we're running out of time to find a homestead before I have to leave, if we have a 1-month closing date, because now it's the end of February, so we'd have March. If it takes until the end of March to get closed on a house, that means I have April, and I leave the 1st of May. So we have like 0 time to play around with this at this point if we want it done before I go to Idaho.
Mandy Lynn says, I thought Angora was a cat. You know, I would have done exactly the same thing, not just the name.
There actually is an Angora cat, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I think it's called a Persian. But you have Angora goats, you have Angora rabbits, and I do believe that it is actually called an Angora cat. And what it is it's just an overdeveloped undercoat that is very fluffy. And I have actually had people ask me if I would spin their cat fiber, and being able to spin pet fiber depends on how well taken care of the pet is and whether or not you brush them well and whether or not they have stuff in their fiber and if it smells bad and that kind of thing. It has to be pretty pristine in order to turn out any kind of good, valuable, happy, usable product.
Let's see. Kathleen says, I like pawpaw leaves. They remind me of rhododendrons.
Rhododendrons.
Yeah. Which are? I would thought that was a cat. So.
They're like, you know those kind of evergreen looking trees out there that have kind of the round shiny leaves? They'd never fall around here.
Yeah. They actually plant those in Idaho too, if you force them up. Go ahead.
They kind of remind me of an orange leaf. But that's what they look like, the pawpaw leaves.
Nice. Let's see. Uh-oh. People are saying the live stream is getting very choppy.
I bet
I hope
it is.
not. Todd says, snakes, tornadoes, and neighbors that let their big dogs run free. You sure okay is a good fit? Grin?
I either choose my husband or I choose Idaho. And my commitment to my husband came first, so I must pick him.
Right.
And he will not, he will not go back to Idaho with me, so I can choose my husband or I can choose Idaho.
That is not necessarily true.
It is so true.
No, if it came down to it, I would be forced to make the same choice. But
as long as my Idaho homestead feels like it's a hop, a skip, and a jump away, and I feel like
literally hop to Salt Lake, skip over to the next flight, and jump into Idaho Falls. Yep.
Yeah. If I have dirt here, I am okay not being in Idaho. If I can put down roots, I can handle being here. But I have a hard time being here without some kind of roots. It's very hard to go back and forth every 6 months.
Let's see. So Cynthia Fisher says, hey, wait, didn't you live in Idaho when you made the commitment?
I did, but I wasn't a homesteader. He did not know that I was crazy when we got married. So. I had horses. I owned my own horses. I had 2 horses when we met, and I sold those very shortly before we got married because I thought the horses were a bad idea to go into a new marriage with, to have this kind of exorbitant expense. And it felt very selfish because I was still going to school. I had school to finish up. He was working full-time. I was working part-time and going to school. And so just before we got married, I did sell my horses. But he didn't, I was not a good gardener before we got married. I was not a good builder before we got married. I was not good at any of this stuff. I was really bad at it. I tried it, but I never succeeded until after we got married.
I'm waiting for Aardvark to come in with a snarky comment about that. But
is he still watching? Is he still on? I don't know.
I don't know.
So he came first. He comes first, and so we're just gonna. That's what we're doing for now.
Mandy then says, "May God bless you both." Thank you, Mandy. God bless you.
That's very kind.
Have a good week. Oh, Garvin Gardens. I was looking at your dad's greenhouse today, and it's really beautiful. I assume via video.
One of the videos, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he did a really good job with it.
Unless you stopped by and said hi. He'd love to show you if you're out that way. So. Let's see. Mandolin relates. She says, Daniel is learning just how crazy I am and how I jump in with both feet. Yes.
Well, once you've been successful in homesteading, I think it gets really addictive because you see what's possible. If you have felt powerless for most of your life, if you felt like you couldn't make a difference for most of your life, and then the things that you're doing on your own property, in your own home, start to leaps and bounds change the way you look at the world, change the way that you live, it empowers you to such a degree that you really can't live without it. It is very addictive. When we moved out to the homestead, and I started to look around for ways to make the homestead pay for itself, and we figured it out, it was extremely gratifying to see what a difference it made for me to be home, how much money I could save, how much money we paid off on everything because I was staying home and I was doing these self-reliant things. We were really blessed, and it was really nice that we had that opportunity to do that. And now I have a really, really hard time living without it, without that sense of empowerment, without that sense of, even though control is an illusion, without that sense of being able to fix things with my own skills and with natural resources. I feel very ungrounded and very powerless and very dependent when I don't have that capacity to do that.
High five. Good
Careful. It's going to knock your elbow.
job. Sunny DIY's in. He
Hey,
says
how are ya?
it's empowerment, but it's also security.
It is both. Well said.
Oh, we're helping people network. Cynthia Fisher and Cindy are about 9 miles apart.
Oh, cool.
Just discovered that on chat.
That's awesome.
Let's see.
Oh, for crying out loud.
What?
Aardvark.
What?
Well, it'll warm up the cold, cold heart that is Idaho when the magma chamber blows. That's all I can say about it.
Well, I mean, think about it. The rest of us down here are just going to have to suffer through the eternal, wretched, post-apocalyptic winter that it's going to provide. So, up there, you just die quick. No, I was thinking you'd chime in about your building.
What building?
You said that you used to be bad at building. I figured the first thing he was going to come up with was used to.
No, honey, you said it.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, hey.
You both should just tag team it and just lay on me.
Wouldn't that be great? Okay, Cynthia says, what about the tornadoes? Kind of like Aardvark says, well, what about the Yellowstone exploding? So, that's kind of
we haven't been here through a tornado. We've been here...
And Aardvark just said, stop reading my mind.
Yeah, I hate both of you. Hate is not too strong a word.
Sorry. I'll sit back here. Go ahead.
You've been in trouble for this before, so you might want to watch it.
What did he
Both
do?
of you. Both of you.
What did they do?
Okay, do you have on your jammies? Go brush your teeth. No, it is time. Go brush your teeth.
Let's see. Do you guys eat store foods like coffee and chips and cereal, or you're only your own gardening?
If you guys think that I'm bad at building, you should see what I was doing in my early 20s
now
before
she's
you met
offended.
me. No, I'm thinking about it. I was trying to think back to the conversation where it came. So when I was in my early 20s, I lived in my parents' back pasture, and I slept in a hammock at night, and I wore nothing but like what I would now consider extremely immodest, but I was like this little hippie chick. And I would dig in the mud, and I would put together these little teepees that you couldn't sleep in because they were terrible. And my fences were made out of sagebrush. And my poor patient father just let me do that. There was this one little like half-acre spot that he just let me tear up. And I put in T-posts, and I had turkeys out there, and I had a goat out there, and a sheep. And I lived in this little half-acre paradise where I made what's called a semi-subterranean salish. Look it up. And what it is it's a sunken earth shelter that is made with mud and sticks, and it's sunk. And I made myself a grill out of a couple of cinder blocks, and I put a shelf over the top of it so that I could grill steak, because we raised cows, so there was an endless supply of steak on the farm. And I lived in this hammock, and I got so much better. I was so sick when I started it, but being outside that much saved me. So if you want to know if I've become any better at building things, you should ask my dad about the year I was 23, and I tore up the back pasture building imaginary places that didn't work, and I tried to garden and it didn't work. I was so bad at it. And now I grow strawberries in straw bales, and I graze goats out on grazing stakes, and I'm amazing. And you both suck.
Amazing.
You're both terrible. You're
What?
both so mean.
Now your poor patient husband is helping you find a house to do it all over
you're never going to be
again.
forgiven for that one, because Aardvark even knew to keep his mouth shut on that one.
No.
He didn't say anything till you said something.
No,
You guys
he
are
just
so
literally just
much
popped
trouble.
in. Says you do realize there are some stories you shouldn't tell.
I'm not telling that story. I'm not telling that story. I'm just sitting here thinking these two.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Cindy, there was no way I had to release that. So, Cynthia, hurry and get. And because I'm in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Going to take people's email addresses off. Okay, so nobody share your email address on a public live feed. That's a very bad idea.
Just
That
go
is my
over to
security talking.
dirtpatcheaven@gmail.com and put it there.
Manuel says have John pick up horse poop.
He doesn't do that kind of thing.
Nope. I buy the land for the people who do.
Do you? Do you? Do you?
Shannon Graver says, boy, we don't want to get Mike and John together. My posse's coming in. We could have the cavalry.
For what?
I don't know. Whatever.
What do you need a cavalry
Whatever's
for?
going on.
What do you need a cavalry for?
Well, you haven't read the rest of the comments where they're like, you go, Julie. So.
You're in so much dog poop tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for not swearing.
Go brush your teeth. Right now. Go.
I already did.
No. Go.
I already did.
You want to be in trouble? Go upstairs. Now. You're done with art for the night. You are done. No, you're not taking it upstairs. You are not. You are done for the night.
So. Hang on. Okay. What about floss for teeth? Was that for poor Kaya?
Yeah, she's in the middle of flossing her teeth, but she likes to come down and be part of the conversation even while flossing her teeth.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Shannon said it right. Mike buys the tools so I can pick the poop.
Well, there is that. And that was our deal in the beginning, was that if I was going to homestead, the deal with us is that I would never ask him to help me with it. That it would be my project, and I had to find ways to get money to pay for my projects, and then I had to build my projects. And I was perfectly happy with that, except the exception there is if I'm out of town. It is nice if John can take care of the rabbits or the garden or the ponies. The one thing is I have to automate it as much as possible so that he's not having to like guess, look at what I've done and guess what needs to be done. It needs to be something where he can just flip a switch or just turn the pump on, if that makes sense. And it's worked out really well. There's been very few times where I've had to cash in on that. But was it last spring? I think it was last year. I was gone for I think 6 weeks before we came back for the Missouri Baker's Creek. And he did keep the garden alive for me that whole time so that I could see how it would do in the heat, and that was very important.
Kathleen Schaefer, have you found more local homesteaders?
I have found a lot of local homesteaders, but it's really hard for me to go out to people's homesteads because I don't have my own to show off. It's very hard to go see what everybody else is doing and just sit there and like stare at it and wonder. And then to go home to an apartment and be like, I used to do that. This really makes me unhappy that I'm not currently doing it. So I think that once I have my own space, if I get my own space, that I will feel differently about going around to local areas and learning from people. But at this point, I've only really been to one, and that was super fun. That would be Heirloom Permaculture. We did go out and see them. But I think another thing is I get really worn out without enough physical activity, like farm type of activity. If I have homestead work to do, then my battery gets charged. But without that, I have a tendency to be kind of low energy, and it's hard for me to go and be around people without getting really worn out. So I kind of try to limit that unless John can go with me.
Christine Cordiega. Hello, what do I do to spin dog fur from Malamute?
You want to use a core, which means a piece of thread, and you spin onto the thread rather than trying to create a cohesive yarn with the dog hair itself. The thread just allows you to spin a much finer, a much tighter yarn without worrying that it's going to come apart because you had to spin it so fine and so tight. That's how I do it. Otherwise, it will take you forever and it'll be very prickly. I would show you how to do it right now, but I don't have a free bobbin.
Right. Sunny DIY. Talking about hubby. He sometimes will help if I don't ask him. LOL. He doesn't want to help me when I ask him. Excuse me. He sometimes will if I do, but with a cocky attitude. LOL.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't mind doing it myself. We had a few times where it was really essential that John help me because I really didn't know what to do. I didn't really have a solution. When we put in the ditch system, John came out and helped me dig openings.
A ditch. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we were putting in the culverts. The ditch was already there, but we had to put in the culverts.
And I had to fill the end of it.
With the tractor?
No, that was bare by hand.
I thought we used the
rototiller.
rototiller.
No, we had to put, because we had put the chunks of concrete from the backyard, rolled them 130 yards, just slabs of concrete, clunk, 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 100 odd yards to a ditch bank to use as fill.
We did do that.
Poured dirt over.
Yeah, so when we were trying to figure out the watering.
Resilient back then.
Yeah.
Anyway. Sorry. Go ahead. I was digging ditches for you in my labor of love.
So he came out and helped me dig ditches. We put in the culverts together, and I think we put 3 in, and I had him help me with that. And there were, I think, 2 or maybe 3 times that I had hay, that I was able to get enough hay for a good enough price that I really needed an extra set of hands, and we went and got hay together. But over the course of the 5 years that we were there before we started moving around, I think it happened maybe 3 times.
Sammy says I just stopped asking. I don't mind doing it myself until it fails, and then he says, why didn't you just ask for my help?
Because sometimes it's more painful to ask for help. I got to the point where one of the reasons I like having a smaller property is I can maintain it myself. I don't have to ask for help, so it doesn't cause awkwardness in our relationship of, well, it's your project, why do you need my help? And so I like having a smaller property because there's less work to do. I can still be a mom, I can still be a wife, I can still have a life, and yet still do the things that I really care about on the scale that I can manage it for myself. But it is why I started YouTubing, is because I really needed it to be a self-sustaining project where what I was doing brought money into the family instead of draining money out of the family. Because at that point, it really was just a hobby. I hadn't figured out how to make it productive. Now I figured out how to make it productive. But in the beginning, it wasn't. I really had to learn my systems. I really needed to be studying and experimenting. And it took years to figure out how to really do it in a way that was sustainable for me. And so it was very helpful to have an extra source of income that came off of the home rather than off of John's paycheck.
Kathleen's asking, would they be interested in creating a labor/project trade bank to get some outside exercise, maybe?
For like homesteaders?
That would be an interesting idea.
Let's see, where are they? Oh, I need it to come back because it's hard for me to...
Well, Sunny...
Would they be interested in creating a labor project trade bank to get some outside exercise? I know for me, because of just the way that my life has always been, is that I have moments of energy and it's never predictable when it's going to come. So for me to work on my own homestead is about the only way I can handle it. For one thing, I homeschool my kids, so they always have to be with me. And it takes some real planning to take my kids anywhere because I have to be able to feed them. And that gets expensive if you don't take your own food out. So for me, I really do think that the best, most economical way to have a house run smoothly and have the expenses down is to have someone that stays home and manages the home, so that you're not having to buy freezer meals, so that you're not traveling a lot. We only have one car now, and it's because I don't like to be away from the house running errands and doing projects and things, because when I do that, we eat more, we spend money on gas, and then I buy things that we really don't need. By the car being with John during the work day, it means that we stay home and the girls do a really good job on school, and if we need something, we can just walk to the store and get it. And that's why we're in the apartment we are now, is so that we could facilitate that kind of life where we were minimizing our expenses and optimizing our health in the situation that we're currently in. So I think no matter what you do, if you want to save money and pay debts off and that kind of thing, you have to be very purposeful about how you set your life up. It really matters. For us, it's a blessing not to have 2 cars. For us, it's a blessing not to have outside projects to do. It just makes us more economical in the way that we run our lives. And we're getting done the things that we really care about, which is this year, and probably for the next few years, is going to be the girls' school, the girls' education.
Mandela says, my energy comes and goes being a mom, and yes, it is the best way to save money having one of us home. It so is.
It really is. And if you have the right tools, for me, having the right tools is so much a part of homesteading and saving money and that kind of thing. If you have the right tools, you can do it right the first time, and you can really maximize your time and your money. When we were prepping, we were really careful about what kind of tools we bought. We were really careful that we were paying cash for things unless it was a real emergency. And you know, there was very little that we thought was worth getting with credit. Our big wood stove was one of those things, because we had floorboard heat that would have cost us $600–700 a month in the winter to heat with. The stove paid for itself its first year. It really did. And so that was, and it's difficult to make those decisions about which expenses are worth having when you're trying to have a self-reliant lifestyle, because sometimes you have something that goes bad and you really don't have an option except to fix something or purchase something. And I think that's one of the hardest things about trying to be self-reliant, is to know what things are worth investing in and what things it's worth waiting for. That's a pretty tricky spot. Oh, is anybody having any questions? Are we done?
Not much.
Okay. All right, then we will go put our kiddos in bed. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
I should have some gardening videos that are pretty basic. I'm trying to think what I have ready to go. I have some gardening videos. I have some food preservation videos ready for if you have homestead animals and you aren't really wanting to put everything that's coming out of your kitchen into compost. Instead, you'd rather feed it to some of your animals. So I have those videos coming, and then I think we have...
Wayne, hurry and shoot me that email address. I'll bookmark it.
I think I have 2 videos left about the homestead search, and I think once I get beyond that, either, I don't know, I guess we could be still looking at that point, but at this point I have 2 left to put up. And that's pretty much it. My battery's just about to die. So thanks for watching. Thanks for all the visits. And
it's good seeing y'all.
We'll see you.
a wonderful week.